Hi everyone, my name is James. Welcome to King's Fine Woodworking. Today I'm going to show you how to make a super easy and very accurate mortise and tenon joint, and the mortise is cut with a router. First, I want to say thank you to everyone for the fantastic year so far, and I want to tell you that our Father's Day sale for 2019 begins right now. We have wood from around the world to make our Thor's Hammer woodworking mallets, and starting now, they are all on sale for half price. We will run out of our precious lignum vitae, which is the world's densest wood, and cocobolo, the most beautiful rosewood of all, because these are no longer being imported. But these two are half price for the sale until I run out. Details of the sale are in the description below. Thank you everyone, and have a happy Father's Day. As with all projects like this, the easiest thing to do is just to get an accurate layout. I like to use the double square, which is the tool that I'm using here. It's real simple. If I want the edge of my mortise to start 3/4 of an inch from the edge of the wood, I'll just set the adjustment on the double square over 3/4 of an inch and draw those lines. And it's the same thing here. I know the distance down from the top of the wood where I want the bottom of the mortise, so I've just set that up with the double square as well, and that makes it easy. Now the next thing we have to do is to make a jig. This is a scrap piece of plywood that I have, and I've kind of laid it out here into 3 boards. I'm going to try to make 3 boards out of this, so I'm just going to cross cut it on my chop saw to get an approximate size. Measurements really aren't important for this, and you'll see why that is in a few minutes when we put it together. And after I cut these strips out, I'll just take a square board of say 10 by 12 roughly, and I'm going to cut a square in the middle of that to match the size of my mortise, which is what I've done here. And I didn't really show how to cut that out. It's pretty self-explanatory, I think, for everybody at this stage of the game. You drill a hole and just cut it out carefully with a jigsaw. But notice how I set it on top of the post, on top of the walnut piece where I want to cut the mortise. And I made sure that the hole I cut out here lined up with the hole I want to cut on the mortise, and then I traced this all the way around. After tracing it, I'm putting down some double-sided tape. The tracing that goes around the perimeter is just going to allow us to line the post back up quickly and easily. And that's what we're going to do here. I'm going to make sure those holes match back up, and that's going to happen as long as I get this back on those lines. Okay, thus far you can see everything is really pretty straightforward. I have a mortise of a known size, which I carefully laid out on this walnut post, and then I laid out another hole of the same size on this piece of plywood. It didn't matter where on the plywood it was, and it didn't have to be square to the plywood itself. It just had to be the same size, somewhere in the middle. The next step is to just take one of those pieces of plywood that we ripped, and we're going to glue it right there. And the way I like to do that is to just put a little bit of CA on this. We don't want so much CA that it squeezes out and soaks our post. We just want it to stick to the plywood. So I'll put some accelerator on the plywood that's facing down there, and I'll put some glue onto the little strip, and I'll just stick it there. Now I am sticking that strip down right flush to the top edge of the post. Hopefully you can notice that. I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. Basically, I'm going to put glue on the plywood strip that I'm putting down. I'm going to spray accelerator on the piece of flat plywood down there, and I'll slide this right into place and stick it together. The accelerator just makes it cure instantly. And also notice that I did put this strip flush with the top of the post too, and that's so I can put that end cap on. So now the end cap is really going to tie all this together. So I want to get glue on all of these surfaces, and of course since I have glue in these places I can't really spray it first, but that's okay. I'll have the spray ready, and I will put the piece in place, and while I'm holding it firmly I can spray the joints. Some of that accelerator will seep in and it will bond really fast. And you can see what we have created here is a pocket which fits on the edge of our piece that we're going to mortise, and it fits perfectly. And that's it. That's all there is to building a jig like this. The jig is complete and ready to go. There's one small difference. I'm going to use this jig for a whole bunch of posts, so I will probably take the time and tack the jig together. So once I've pulled the jig off, we want to take the tape off, and we'll just do a little test fit, make sure it fits back on there and fits nice and snug. And that does, it fits really good. So I'll flip the jig over, and I'm just going to put some pin nails in it. I'll tack it together like I said. This will just give it a little bit more durability. If I drop it or anything like that, it's not going to pop apart on me, and it'll stay consistent for me to do a whole bunch of these posts. These posts are actually legs that I'm doing for an upcoming walnut daybed, which will be in a future video. Okay, so here it goes. It literally took me 5 minutes to build the jig. That was real time on the camera. Now I'm going to go ahead and put the jig on the post, and I'm going to cut a mortise. And I'm going to show you how fast this whole process is, and you can kind of judge for yourself. So I'm going to slide the jig into place, and I've built the jig in such a way that I can clamp it right here like this. This will squeeze those two pieces together and make it so that the jig doesn't move. You will need a router with a plunge cutting capability and a flush trim bit with a bearing on top. I do happen to have a spiral upcut bit here, which is really powerful, and it makes this process go extremely fast. What I'm going to do is just plunge it right down into the middle, maybe wiggle it around a bit, until I get that bearing just below the surface of my wood, of my template there, and I'll run the bearing along the template. Once that's done, I will lower the plunge cut a little bit further, right in the middle, and I will run that around the inside of my template also. This is going to deepen the mortise for me. So I'll go ahead and do my final plunge to the deepest depth that I can comfortably go here with this template on top, this jig on top, and we'll do our cut, our final cut around to clear it out. And that's it. If that was the depth I was going to, you can see that about 2 more minutes have elapsed, and I have successfully cut a perfect mortise in about 2 minutes, which isn't bad. We're just going to take the clamp off here, take a quick look at it, and look at it. That's it. The mortise is exactly where it was supposed to be. However, this particular mortise, I want to go deeper, and I'm going to show you how to do that. We take the jig off, I'll take my same router bit back in, and I'll plunge right down into the middle of that hole. All I need to do is get a little bit deeper so that the bearing is below the edge of the hole. And now the bearing will ride on the inside edge of the existing cut. And it will allow me to deepen the cut, and it will stay the exact same size all the way around. That's the magic of the flush trim bit. And we'll take that out and take a quick peek at what happened there. And you can see this is it. It's perfect. It made the mortise just a little bit deeper like I wanted to, and we added at most another minute. So that's all you have to do to cut perfect mortises. I'm going to show you now how to cut a tenon. So I'm going to sketch on the end of the wood here, just roughly where this tenon is going to go so that you can see. It's probably self-explanatory, but just in case. It's going to go just like that, and this piece is going to sit here. So now I have to figure out how to transfer this layout, and I'm going to show you that. Basically, I'm going to loosen up the ruler part of my double square, make sure it's flush along one edge of my post, and then I'll just slide the ruler over until it makes contact with the edge of the mortise. Then I'll tighten it down, I'll verify that that's accurate, and I'll check the other side just in case. And it's accurate too because I did center the mortise. And then I'll just take that over to the piece of wood where the tenon is going to go, and I will transfer those marks over there. This project is made really easy with the use of a lot of these little tools, and I'll put a link to everything that I used in this video in the description below in case there's anything that you're interested in getting or something that you want to take a further look at. There'll be something in the description to help you out there. And so we're just following up by finishing those lines out a little bit, and these lines are actually the cheek cuts of the tenon. Okay, just one more measurement needed at this point. We want to see how deep the mortise is. So I've got my double square. I think this one's a little bit bigger. And I'm going to loosen the ruler portion, and I'll insert this down into the mortise till it bottoms out at the bottom. I'll slide the handle part down until it stops. And you can see I'm making sure that I am bottomed out there. We'll just tighten that up, and that's it. That's how deep the mortise goes. Now we know we have to put that at the end of our post. Put it on this end so you can see it better. And basically draw the end of the mortise. That's it. I'll go ahead and flip the square around here and just draw that line all the way across so that we can see what this whole thing looks like. And that's it. So we've just done a perfect layout. That just took a few seconds. Well, I was going to stop there, but I figured I might as well go ahead and show you how to cut this tenon out. This is the table saw sled that I created, and this sled allows you to do crosscuts as well as dados or miters or all sorts of things, and it's got a changeable zero clearance insert. So I'm going to put a link to this in the description in case you're interested in seeing how this works. But I basically will raise up the dado blade until I hit the line. That's going to be the depth that I want this dado to cut at. It's going to stop right at the cheek there of this tenon. Then we'll put my sample board back at the fence, and if you notice this edge of the fence right here, that's the exact flush line where the blade cuts to, and I want it to cut right flush to the edge of that. That's the shoulder of the tenon there. And I want it to cut right to that edge, and so I have that set up, and I've put a clamp with a stop block in to stop it from cutting that point. So now I have the depth set, and I have the total length of the depth of cut set. I could cut a sample board, but I'm just going to go ahead and cut the first tenon because my experience is these tend to work out perfectly. So I'm going to make my first cut, and then I'll just move the board over a little bit, make the second cut, and move the board over a little bit more, and make the final cut. It's important to hold the board down tight to the sled in order to make this, and this is by far the easiest way to cut tenons. I'll flip the board upside down, go over to my stop, and I'll cut the second cut out. And you see that lines up perfectly with the shoulder of this tenon, and the top of the blade is basically cutting the cheeks of the tenon. And one more pass, and that's really it. That's the width of this tenon. This table saw sled also makes it really easy to cut tenons on the end of very long boards. You may need a hand from someone holding it way out there on the left, or you could even put a little extension on your fence to carry that if you need to, or have a slide out there. But it's pretty simple to cut really long tenons if you cut them horizontally in this fashion. After that's done, we will go back to our layout, and we will basically measure again the depth down that we need for the side cuts on the tenon, the other two cuts there, and we'll take it back over to the table saw. We won't move the stop at all. All we're doing is adjusting the blade height for the top and bottom portion of this tenon here, but the layout's exactly the same. And just as easy as that, the tenon is completely done. You might be worried that we have a square tenon and a round mortise, but that's really not a problem. You have two options. You can square the mortise with a chisel, or you can round the tenon. If the tenon is rectangular, I choose to round them because it's super easy. I just take an aggressive rasp, and I'll cut a 45-degree chamfer real quick. It takes just a few seconds on the corners, the edges of the tenon, and I'll take a slightly smoother rasp and I'll round them over. And it probably takes me 3 or 4, maybe 5 minutes to cut each one and fit it for a perfect fit, but to me it's a whole lot easier than chiseling that mortise to be square, especially when it involves a deep mortise. If it were a shallow mortise, it really wouldn't be a problem. Sometimes your rasp or your chisel won't get, or your rasp or your other file won't get all the way down to the shoulder, and so you'll need to use a chisel in this case in order to clear out some of that waste, but that's also not a problem. And if you were to gouge in a little bit of the shoulder at that depth, that also wouldn't matter because it won't affect the fit of the tenon. And remember, the cheeks of the tenon, the top and bottom and the two sides, aren't being affected. We're only taking this material off of the corners in order to get it to fit nicely in the mortise. And a quick glance there will tell you that it fits pretty good, and that's the look we're trying to achieve. And occasionally you might need a shoulder plane or a block plane to fine-tune the fit, but if you cut and measure accurately, typically you don't. And so there it is. I'm showing you that we are putting this project together. I think I cut 14 or so mortise and tenon joints for this project. And overall, I think it took us an hour or two to cut them all. It really wasn't that involved of a process. And that's it. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching.